Hi guys, it's Kirsty. In today's video, I want to talk about the relationship between self-confidence and suffering from OCD and or anxiety. But before I go into that, I'd like to ask, please do subscribe by clicking on the subscribe button below in order to stay up to date with new videos as they're released. So the reason why I wanted to do this video is because I think generally people can agree that when you're suffering from mental health difficulties, it can have a huge impact on your self-confidence. And it can make you feel like you can't do things, and it can obviously make you doubt yourself, as OCD repeatedly does. And I wanted to talk about my own experience with losing confidence while suffering from anxiety and OCD, and how I started to overcome this loss of confidence during my recovery journey. So I started to notice a growth in my confidence before I was kind of even feeling more recovered, basically, like based on like some of the work that I was doing cognitively and behavioral wise. I started to feel a growth in my confidence even when I was still suffering from anxiety and intrusive thoughts locked on 24/7. So I wanted to kind of with a lot of this video, it will be drawing upon my own experiences. So before I go into too much detail, I'd firstly like to read a definition that I found online for self-confidence. So here we have a feeling of trust in one's abilities, qualities and judgment. So it's no wonder when we're suffering from anxiety and OCD particularly that we would suffer from a loss in self-confidence when we're having repeated obsessions maybe about the type of person that we are, that we're the type of person that we consider to be bad or essentially what we don't want to be, or it's like obsessions about our ability to do things, our ability to be a mother, a partner, or in our job. So obviously this is going to have an effect on our self-confidence. And if we're talking about bearing in mind OCD used to be known as a doubting disease, we're talking about our judgment as well. It's difficult to kind of trust your own judgment with certain things when you've been suffering from OCD for a while and anxiety, because we know that the kind of alert system in our minds for danger is essentially on full volume. It's on high alert. So our judgment of things may be that it's more dangerous than it actually is. So after a while, we start to kind of just question whatever we might think about things, oh, is this my OCD, or, is it me? So constantly doubting yourself, constantly questioning yourself. And because of the intrusive thoughts and the constant kind of mind work and the rumination, it can start to make you almost feel a little bit like you're losing aspects of yourself, especially if you're doing a lot of avoidance, if you're not doing the things that you used to do, that sort of made you feel like doing the things that you used to enjoy doing or that you were good at doing. You almost feel like at certain points that your personality is almost disintegrating because you're doing so much mental analysis. You don't feel present. You don't feel in the room. You don't feel like yourself. You don't, you can, especially if you're suffering from depersonalization or derealization, however you might word it, again, it's kind of, you feel like you just don't feel like yourself again. So it's very hard to kind of believe in yourself and believe in your judgments and your abilities to do things because you don't even feel like yourself anymore. So in addition to, the constant doubting yourself and your ability to judge things and make decisions, you can find yourself relying on other people and being quite open to suggestion and relying on other people for that reassurance. And that again reinforces that sort of feeling, that sort of losing your confidence in yourself. And in addition to that, also, it makes you feel like because you're suffering from OCD and anxiety and, you're quite distracted to it, that further can make you feel like you can't do things the way you used to. You can't do things as well. You're not working at your kind of optimal productivity, which, again, it further reinforces that feeling of lost confidence. So I just want to mention that there's a really, really good chapter about loss of confidence in one of the books on the reading list. It's a book by Claire Weekes called Self-Help for Your Nerves. And this has a, quite a good chapter describing why people may feel a loss in confidence and the process of, regaining confidence as well. So for me, I personally found that I would, before my OCD became really, really chronic 24/7, I think looking back, I was kind of, suffering from reduced confidence in myself anyway, because I'd had a lot of anxiety over the years on and off, although not locked on 24/7 the way it became when I was 31. Apologies for the barking just then. It was the post lady, and my dog likes to try and speak to people through the door, I think perhaps to entertain himself. So as I was saying, because I was repeatedly doubting myself, I would believe the self-doubting thoughts that I would have, not knowing at the time that you don't have to believe everything you think, which we obviously learn when we start doing more research into anxiety and OCD. So I think that looking back, that sort of self-doubt and lacking of kind of self-confidence held me back in several ways, maybe kept me on a career path that wasn't quite right for me because I doubted my ability to kind of do any better. And then as my anxiety became worse, and then I ended up with kind of locked on obsessions, I then doubted my ability even further, because I doubted my ability to cope if certain things happened. And then I doubted my ability to be able to manage kind of certain jobs of a certain responsibility or change because of the anxiety that I was suffering. So my self-confidence was reduced even further. So what I did start to find, though, was as I was working on my OCD recovery and my self-confidence was coming back more and more, it came back in a way different to what I expected. And this is where I want to offer some tips if you're struggling with your kind of, feeling like you've lost your self-confidence. You're wondering if you're going to feel confident again if you felt confident before, or maybe you're wondering if you're ever going to feel confident, having never really felt particularly confident. So one of the things that we talk about for OCD recovery a lot on this channel is unconditional self-acceptance. So this basically means that we don't put a global rating on ourselves, us being good or bad, completely as a human being. We see ourselves as a human being who is capable of good and bad acts, and our self-worth is just the same as everybody else, simply just for being a human being in existence. So with this principle in mind, this can be linked to, how we start to grow our self-confidence, because we don't have to have our self-confidence, our feeling of kind of getting behind ourselves and self-confidence and trust in ourselves, rely on our ability to do everything. Obviously, if you do a good job on something, it can give you a good boost, but what we want to work towards is not avoiding giving things a go for fear of, failing, and also not allowing our thoughts about what other people may think of us to dictate what we do and don't do. And when we start living more like that, we start to live more on our own terms. And that's where you might find that the self-confidence starts to come back again. You start to, have a bit more trust in your own, decisions. You don't have to check it out with other people so much, because you start to see that you can handle it if it's the wrong choice. And knowing that as you kind of go about your day-to-day life and, you make some decisions or you get out and about, knowing that you can handle disappointment, knowing, because you've worked on irrational beliefs surrounding this, knowing that you aren't writing yourself off completely as a human being if you do something wrong or if you fail at something, can give you that extra kind of self-confidence to pursue things that perhaps you didn't have before. I can certainly speak from my own experience now. If I'm confronted with something that could be quite difficult, I remember how hard it was when I was at my worst in my OCD suffering, and the fact that I got through that period and then I went back to my, at the time, very stressful job. and I was doing that job while still locked on 24/7, whilst desperately trying to work on my OCD recovery and maybe going down some wrong paths before I started to find what worked for me. But knowing that I did all of that whilst suffering with 24/7 locked on OCD, anxiety, intrusive thoughts, kind of gives me a bit of a boost to know that what might crop up now, I can handle, because I handled that. I came through it. Yeah, there were some really difficult days, and there may have been, some days where I felt like, I felt like I'd been defeated. But because I know that I got up the next day and went in about my business, doing most of the things that I kind of planned to do while suffering like that, it adds to my self-confidence now, knowing that I got through that period. So it's almost like, for me, I can use my experience of, extreme suffering with OCD to remind myself of my ability to cope and handle things, and see that I'm not I'm not weak the way OCD may have made me feel at certain points. You're not, because if you're going about your day-to-day life with OCD, that is something else. Other people who haven't suffered from mental health difficulties, and to be honest, it seems more and more like those people are few and far between. We may look at those people and compare ourselves to them, like, why can't I do what they do? And berate ourselves because they appear to be able to do things so much better than us, and they're confident and all of that. But we're doing whatever we need to do while suffering with OCD, and that constant discomfort and our minds going 24/7 to be able to do our job even at sort of even slightly less than average level, to be honest, was pretty impressive given what's running in the background constantly. So what I'm saying is the act of working on unconditional self-acceptance, personally for me, helped to boost my confidence in myself, because it meant that my confidence in myself, like, as we talk about self-esteem, no longer depended on me being able, on outside achievements or other people's approval, because I'd sort of worked on disputing the need for other people's approval. I'd done certain exercises to help with this, such as shame attacking. There's a video on this channel about shame attacking, and you can read about it in Albert Ellis's book on the reading list, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, ... anything. So you can read more about shame attacking there, but that was something that really helped me as well, in terms of, I'm doing this thing for me to boost my mental health, and I'm doing it regardless of what everybody else thinks about me around me. I'm doing it for myself. I care that much about myself, and that's what I'm doing. So like with self-esteem, when we talk about, and another book on the reading list where you can sort of read more about self-esteem and feelings of self-worth, it's called The Myth of Self-Esteem, also by Albert Ellis. It's on the reading list. Albert Ellis talks about, not needing to, boost your self-esteem in order to see yourself as worthy as other human beings. And the same applies for, confidence. It's my feeling of self-confidence no longer has to rely on, like I say, external factors and your ability to do things, because you've worked on unconditional self-acceptance. You've worked on being able to, have compassion for yourself and seeing that you could cope if the worst case scenario is true. And in gaining a higher sense of a kind of a higher level of self-acceptance, that feeling of self-confidence comes with that, and it no longer means that you're no longer held back maybe by the risk of failure, or no longer fearful about your ability to cope with things. So this has been my experience of kind of my self-confidence growing during working on my OCD recovery. And a good example of this is something I always used to look at other people planning weddings and various things and think, I could never do that. I couldn't cope with the stress. I'm terrible at planning things. And but actually, I know I can cope with the stress, as I said, from my experience with struggling with OCD whilst working a stressful job, and also from other negative life experiences, like bereavements of close family members. So I knew that, like, after a while, it was like, well, actually, yes, they say wedding planning can be stressful, but maybe you don't have to make it stressful. And it's something that I found whilst planning my wedding. And I wanted to mention that also because I haven't made as many videos more recently, because my to-do list has been quite full up with doing the last bits of wedding planning because it's next month. But that is a good example of something that I never thought I'd be able to do. And aside from the fact that I've kind of I've struggled previously with relationship OCD, well, coupled with that, actually planning my wedding is a huge achievement for me. And this is something that I also want to mention in terms of, you know, growing your confidence during your recovery journey, is celebrating small achievements. You know, other people might not even think it is an achievement, but that doesn't matter whether they think it's an achievement. This is you, your life, and I'm talking about, relatively speaking, in your life. So celebrate leaving the house, celebrate going back to work after having been signed off, celebrate making dinner. And all of these things can add up to, you know, starting to feel a bit more confident, you know, in yourself again. And remember, it's all relatively speaking. You know, you're talking about doing all these things while suffering the way you've been suffering. And something else I would say is, you know, comparison doesn't help with feelings of self-confidence. So really, if you're finding yourself comparing yourself to other people, especially people who, to your knowledge, are not suffering from mental illness or something, but either way, just try not to compare, because all it does is make you feel worse about yourself. And actually, you don't know what's going on in their life, and you don't know how well they're doing with things. Another tip I wanted to add also, in addition to stopping comparing yourself to others, is working on your, like, maybe fears around failing at certain things, because that can obviously hold you back from actually going for things if you're afraid to fail. So start looking at, you know, okay, so if I apply for this job, or if I jump, you know, headfirst into this exciting relationship, what could go wrong? And then start looking at, okay, why is that bad, and why is that bad? And then you can come to your worst case scenario of if you were to fail in this situation. And you want to start bringing your fear down around that as well, you know. So okay, so really look at it. So what's stopping you from applying for that job at work, that promotion at work? And then you start like, okay, I might not get it. Okay, what's so bad about that? Well, then I'll look stupid because I applied for it and I didn't get it. Okay, so what's so bad about looking stupid? Well, people will judge me. You know, start working back like that and really seeing, well, why does it matter if people think a certain way of you? Everybody has to take these chances to go for things like promotions, or ask somebody out who you, you know, have been coveting for a while. At some point, everybody has to take these chances with these things, and everybody's risking that. There's a 50% chance it will go your way, 50% chance it doesn't. If one person isn't afraid of taking that chance, well, surely there's nothing to truly be afraid of for you when taking that chance. It can't be dangerous, really. So really start examining your belief around things, you know, because once you get rid of that fear of failure and know that you can cope with it and what you would do in that circumstance and things like that, you know, that can hold you back even less. And, you know, further sort of that kind of unconditional self-acceptance piece comes in. So I hope this video has been helpful if you are struggling with sort of feeling of self-confidence and, you know, whether it comes back. And I can say, yeah, I mean, it definitely, you can get your confidence back, or you can come out more confident because of the work that you've done. And that's been my experience of it. It's that I'm more confident in myself because of the work that I've done in my OCD recovery, because it has been so hard. But I've done difficult things, and I know I can do more difficult things in life and cope with them. And that sort of feeling of you know, belief in myself, it's really rewarding. And you know, if you're coming to making a decision, you maybe don't feel the need to ask for other people what they think with this decision, because you're like, well, if it turns out crap, the decision that I make, then that doesn't define me totally as a person, and I'll try and make a better decision next time. So I hope it has been helpful, as I say, if you are struggling with your confidence at the moment. And thank you very much for watching this video. Take care. Bye.